Welcome. This is giving a Bible meets business. Welcome, Mr. Dimitrios.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you. I'm going to change the title of it because it's not AI, it's not Bible meets business, but AI meets the Bible. This is my second year doing this, but this year I do have a presentation, right? And I'm going to show you some slides. It's an honor and a privilege to be part of this. It's an honor to meet some great individuals and listen to the presentations this morning. I'm a lawyer. I sue people and make their lives miserable. But I do it kindly, right? And at the end of the day, I want to be fair. Because if we're not fair, no one is going to be fair to us. So today I want to give you a little bit of a view of the future. We talk about the past, and I know we heard some comments today that the past sort of shows us how to do things, but I want to take a look at the future and tell you some of the things that I have been privileged to be a part of because, either because I was a lucky individual, I kind of happened to stumble upon some very, very interesting individuals at MIT, and I came across some amazing, discoveries, some amazing innovational things that are happening in our world. And I want to share these ideas with you so that you can perhaps also take a look at what is coming upon us. Everyone is talking about AI. Everyone has some sense of what AI is. It could be African intelligence. It could be artificial intelligence. It could be all sorts of AI things, right? But at the end of the day, we really need to think about it from your own perspective and my perspective, because I came to the U.S. when I was 12 from a different country, and I didn't speak a word of English, and it took me a long time to kind of get to where I am today. But no matter what my CV says, at the end of the day, I'm a very, very simple individual, and I love technology, and I love people. With Brian, I've had the privilege to go to Uganda a couple of times, and we've had some amazing times there. He took me to the Innovation Village. He took me to the University Innovation Hub, and I had a chance to interact with a lot of innovators in Uganda. And it was a privilege to be part of this and learn from some of the things that Brian and Lois are doing. So the topic of my discussion is AI meets the Bible. And Apostle, I'm going to come to you, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that you have talked about last year, right? And I'm going to give you an introduction of what the AI sees in the Bible today, at least to some degree. Next slide. The first thing I want to tell you about is this question: what do chicken wings have in common with the future of aviation? I know Solomon talked about good food, and that's not one of them. And he talked about plant food, right? That's not one of them, obviously. But the idea behind this slide is an MIT PhD student was having lunch, and he was eating chicken wings. And as he was eating chicken wings, he asked a very simple question: what are the wings of birds made up of, given the fact that we now have all these new materials, polymers, and all sorts of things that are being developed? And, the wings of birds, they fly, birds fly, they don't break. They can maneuver so eloquently, and they have this amazing ability. So he began to actually research this, and this became his PhD thesis, right? Studying the wings of birds and how the wings of birds are made of. And I'm going to talk about the future of aviation after I show you what he developed. And if maybe we can minimize the slide, I have two pictures. The name of the individual is Kenneth Chung from MIT. And the picture on the left-hand side is a picture of what he actually developed, and it's one that I took. And on the right-hand side, you see a picture from an MIT publication, and you can kind of see what he built, right? He was able to kind of put this material together, which is, according to Kenneth, this is how the wings of birds are made up of. And he was able to create a material that is twice as heavy as air. But it is a morphing kind of a material. It changes depending on the circumstances. So now, of course, NASA picked him up, and he's now working for NASA. And of course, Airbus got the license now on this new material. and they're working on the morphing wing. So how are wings, the future of aviation is basically the airplanes are going to go up to 80, 90,000 feet. They're going to shut the engines, and they're going to fly like birds. Sounds futuristic, right? Well, I have the proof. And I have the proof through a YouTube video. And you kind of see what NASA is working on. You kind of see on the left-hand side, the bottom there, you see the wings of birds. And I do have a YouTube video. It's a 2-minute video. And if you can play it, that will be great. Not this one, the previous one. Sound. Thank you. That's not part of my presentation. All right, so moving on to the next slide. Right there. Yeah, the artificial nose. Sounds crazy, right? But I worked with Andreas Mershon of MIT, and I have 2 pictures here. In 2008, an article at the MIT News came out with the following story: MIT engineers mass-produce smell receptors in lab. The question was artificial noses to follow, and that was in 2008. And then here is the new artificial nose that was developed by Andreas for DARPA, which is the United States Government Agency for Research. It looks a little metallic, right? It's big, whatever, but that's the artificial nose. It's 200 times better than a dog. And Andreas, of course, uses technology because we know that dogs actually can smell diseases, right? We all know that. And I'm just showing you an article here that was published through research at Johns Hopkins, and we know that dogs can actually smell diseases at 100% accuracy. They get it right. Dogs can smell COVID in 4 seconds, right? They don't lose. Once you train dogs, that's it. It's done. So we now have actually a device, and you can see it on the bottom left-hand side. Andreas is holding it. It's a little device like this. And then on the right picture, you see Andreas explaining how dogs smell to the 2 queens. Of course, the queen was alive at the time, and he presented this idea of the artificial nose to the queen, because she loves dogs, and she wanted to know how dogs smell. We don't know how dogs smell, but we are able to actually create the same technology, but at a much better, rate. So the artificial nose is something that is going to be in medicine, and the next big thing on the phone is going to be the nose. It's not going to actually look like a nose, but it's going to be a sensor. And we're going to be always constantly smelling our bodies because we all smell, and we know this, right? This is why we use perfume. But at the end of the day, our body gives off a certain kind of a smell, and now we are at the point where we can identify the type of smell. And if something is going wrong in our body gives off a certain kind of a scent, and we are now getting close to the point of being able to identify that. Andreas now has a startup, and he's doing research on prostate cancer. We can actually now smell prostate cancer through the urine. No tests of any kind, 95% accuracy, right? We can smell if a girl is pregnant. We can smell the sex of the baby and who the father is if the father is in the room. I know a lot of men. And doctor, you were talking about the sperm. I'm going to get to that later. But, I do have another video, which I'm not going to show, but you can see a dog actually getting it right, picking the urine smell and knowing that it's the condition, the medical condition that we need to identify. So we are developing technologies that are going to change our world, right? Okay, here it is. That's all that it takes, right? A few seconds and the dog gets it. Oops, here it is. Now, this is something that Andreas created, and he was trying to kind of show us how the smell of the human body sort of disperses behind us or around us, or at least that's an image. That's how we think smell kind of works. And smell is something that we haven't researched a lot, right? So it's now developing. The question for me as a lawyer is, who owns that smell? If I come next to you and I have it on my phone, right? Is it your smell or my smell? Is it my phone smell? Who owns that smell, right? And if it contains medical information, right? Somebody didn't use protection and had sex or whatever, and now all of a sudden we have some kind of a medical condition and I see that, right? Is it your smell or my phone smell? So all that kind of stuff is new. We don't have any regulation for it, so I'm very, very interested in things like that. And then the next question is, can I smell the mental state or the intent of a person? These are all questions that we are now kind of thinking about, right? Imagine if I have a little mobile device and somebody's in court and testifying about a crime, and I ask the question, did you commit the crime? And here's the nose. You cannot lie, right? I get the smell. I do want to talk about another technology that is very, at least, interesting, assuming I can get this thing to work. All right. 3D printing and feathers, yeah. So if you can minimize, please, the screen, that would be great. This is another technology that, again, came out of MIT. It's a scientist, a PhD student who was working with kind of cells and things like that. And he was able to place the cells in these types of structures. And he was able to find out that by changing the type of structure, he could control the functionality of the cells. So what that means, this is an economist paper that was written about that. But what that means that we are 5 to 10 years away from 3D printing human organs on demand. So basically, if somebody needs a heart, they will go in, they'll take some of the cells of the person, put it into the system, the computer, and we're going to 3D print a heart exactly on the same heart, size and things like that, and put it back in the person. No rejection, right? Because it's the same person's cells. So this is incredible stuff. And, for me, it was interesting because I have a client who produces a lot of materials, curtains, bed sheets, and things like that. And he wanted to find out if we could 3D print feathers, because he sells 4 million pillows a year. And the answer to that is yes, we can now get to the point of 3D printing feathers, not looking like feathers, but with the same qualities of feathers. So we are now on the verge of creating all these amazing materials, new discoveries that are coming into the commercial space that we are probably going to drive our future, right? Now, assuming this thing kind of works. Okay, this is a project that I am working on currently. It's in Namibia. It's a NASA MIT project. So NASA has been doing a lot of research on building sustainable housing, right? And the idea is, how are we going to build homes on Mars when we get there? So NASA is working on that, right? And of course, we cannot transport any materials there because obviously they're expensive. We cannot put in, cement bags in a shuttle and take it to Mars. But the humans, we have 2 basic needs. One, food, and waste, right? So now food is something that we cannot really work on, but NASA has been working on waste. So in Namibia, we have an encroacher bush that is very, very active and very aggressive. It takes all the water resources where it grows. And what they now do in Namibia is they cut it down and they burn it, which releases a lot of carbon dioxide. So what we now do is we take that, material, that plant, we cut it down, we chop it, and then we grow mushrooms. And I'm going to show you a video by Wall Street Journal that was on this project, but you can kind of see the building blocks we create at the end of the process, and you're going to see it in the video a lot better than one I can explain, but we basically grow oyster mushrooms. And mushrooms are incredible organisms that we have forgotten. Where do mushrooms grow, if you think about it? In waste, right? And they don't need any sun. They usually grow in the shade, right? They need very little water. They don't need a lot of stuff, right? So here's the next video.
Mushroom like this turn into something like this brick. Researchers and companies are looking to turn fungi into innovative materials for buildings people live and work in. So what's propelling developers to swap out conventional building materials for fungi? And how do these new building materials compare to these more traditional ones? Let's explore why developers think that fungi are the future.
We're in a situation similar to what was in the late 40s or the early 50s when people were just realizing what plastics would do.
That's Andreas Merschen, a researcher at MIT who's using fungi as the building blocks of future houses.
So the mushrooms predate insects and plants and single-celled organisms. They knew how to survive on this planet before we arrived. So they have a lot to teach us.
I wanted to learn more about the mushroom blocks, so one of Andreas' collaborators, fungi architect Chris Marr, stopped by our office.
So you sent me this brick right here. I was surprised at how woody it smelled. What's in it?
Well, it comes from wood, actually. This one is a sample of a material that actually takes wood sawdust from demolition, construction and demolition waste. You can kind of hear that it has the consistency of wood. It has about the weight of wood.
The sawdust is held together by mycelium, which is the root-like system of mushrooms. In bricks like this, the roots act almost like a glue.
And they grow in between the cells and actually hold on to them, bind them at a cellular level.
The way that works is that the fungus is actually digesting key plant proteins to produce chitin. That's the main component in the exoskeletons of insects and crustaceans, like beetles, shrimp, and lobsters. And chitin is a pretty strong but flexible material.
So you can think of that as almost like a true plastic in a sense.
When these chitin-containing root-like systems grow in the wild, they're usually found underground. When it comes to harvesting mushrooms or making blocks, the process looks a little different. Those clear containers you see are filled with mycelium and a substrate, which is made from woody waste material. A substrate is basically what an organism, like a fungus, grows on. The project Chris and Andreas are working on in Namibia to build houses uses oyster mushrooms and mulch from an invasive bush. The type of mushroom and substrate that are used can change the quality of the end product.
You can get anything from a very foamy material, like an insulation or packaging styrofoam type replacement, or you can get something very strong like this.
For bricks, the material needs to be compressed and then baked to dehydrate it. At the end of that process, Chris says that you end up with blocks that beat traditional building materials on several key metrics. Among the most important is strength.
We've made materials that are up to 26 megapascals, which is more than twice what a concrete block is in compression strength.
So the compression strength means what exactly?
Compression strength is the ability to take a downward pressure.
Mushroom blocks can also be more resistant than concrete at withstanding impact, like from this sledgehammer. It's not the most scientific of tests, but it does give you an intuitive idea of just how sturdy mushroom blocks are. Plus,
it replaces it with something that is insulative and can also resist lateral loading, things like earthquakes, without using steel.
That's an important consideration as the world grapples with climate change.
Concrete, steel, and aluminum account for like 23% of the world's carbon emissions.
Plus, he says they're biodegradable and relatively lightweight. Andreas told me that these blocks are also fire retardant, which is a really important quality in building materials. I decided to put that to the test. A little flame, there we go. So if I take it off, it should go off. As expected. The official test will be much more dramatic. They'll have to set a scale model of their fungi building on fire. Chris says that another benefit is food production.
So for every pound of that waste bush, we can actually grow a pound of mushrooms.
The shrooms they're growing in Namibia can also be harvested and sold as food. an important benefit given the food insecurity there. Before habitable mushroom buildings can come to fruition, the technology needs to be vetted further. That includes testing for waterproofing, bending strength, compression, and fire safety. The price of production will also have to come down. Right now, they're way more expensive than traditional bricks, which can cost less than $1. Researchers and companies working to make fungal materials mainstream are confident that that will happen. Regardless, these new materials are a good general reminder of just how versatile mushrooms are, thanks to millions of years of evolution.
Amazing. I hope you get a sense of some of these neat things that are developing, and we want to take this project to Mauritius, for instance, because we want to use sugar canes, and we want to use a lot of other products that are now waste materials. I'm giving you a sense of, the house that we built, the first mushroom house in Namibia, and you kind of see the inside of it, and there we have the U.S. ambassador and the post that was made by the U.S. Embassy. And again, no steel of any kind is used, and it's 100% eco-friendly material, right? No chemicals of any kind. And at the end of it, when you tear down this building, you take that block, you shred it down, and you use it as fertilizer because it's all natural material. And again, incredible technology. Now, AI meets the Bible. Here's where I'm getting interested, Apostle, all right? So I created this image using the phrase, the last day of Earth. And this is the image that I got. Right? And the reason I kind of bring this out is because Brian talked about data and data and data, right? And here are the statistics, right? According to IBM, we are generating each day 25 and 18 zeros. I don't even know what that number sounds like, right? But it's a huge number, bytes of data every day. And then 90% of all of it has been produced over the last 2 years. Now, 80% of all that data is unstructured. That's a huge issue because it means you go in a library, you're looking for a book, but there's no system to find it. It's all over the place. So you're looking for data, you're looking for information, but how are you going to find it if it's not structured? And this is a common problem now with data. The big other problem is the following. We said African intelligence. Well, less than 5% of all the input that is used by the generative AI platforms comes from Africa. Less than 10% comes from adults less than 30 years old. So who's creating all the data that is being used by the AI? White men, right? That's a big, significant problem. So when we talk about data, we need to kind of think about data in a context of our world today. And when I use this picture and this image, what I tell people is that I've run a few experiments using AI, and one of them was, I said, can you create an image of heaven, right? And the AI is giving me all these beautiful paradise-looking places, water, mountains, beautiful trees, animals running around, right? And then when I put the word hell, the AI gave me an image of earth. So basically what we at least know is that the AI is a mirror of our world. It's like looking into ourselves. So what the AI is giving us exactly what we are feeding it. So when it comes to the Bible, when it comes to all this stuff that, you guys are talking about, you have to think of the input. You have to think of what the AI is going to use to be able to generate the output that we want. Controlling the input that the AI uses is more important than the output, right? So this is the key secret, I think, that we all sometimes forget. Controlling the input is where the name of the game is. Now, I've written articles with MIT people on ChatGPT and things like that, and I understand the process and what they're doing, but ChatGPT is basically now stealing information, at least from what we know. That's the claim, right? So basically, it's a super duper calculator. And all it does is it's picking up information from everywhere, and it's giving you the more statistical calculation of the predictive result you want. It cannot think. So a lot of people ask me, well, AI is going to take over the world, and AI is going to do this, and it's going to do that. And what I tell people is, let's not be afraid. The AI cannot ask a question. Only a human can. So we're not there yet. So if we talk about AI, let's not think about African intelligence. Let's not think about artificial intelligence. Let's think of autonomous intelligence, because when that happens, all bets are off. So the key thing for us, I think, when we talk about is like, think about what we can do to influence the input, the information that is fed into the AI, right? Oops. Apostle Grace, here I come to you. Last year, you spoke again after me, and you used some of the stuff that I had talked about in your presentation. So I wanted to do the opposite, with your permission. Well, without your permission. And what I did is I went to your website, and I looked at some of the stuff that you have posted on your website, right? And I wanted to do, I picked one quote. I didn't do an extensive analysis, but I picked this one that you have in your website, and it says, what his eyes have seen, what his ears have heard, and what his hands have handled of the word of truth is what he declares to men, right? And here's your interpretation of that passage. And you wrote, his message is the very substance of what he has experienced and of the places that he has walked in, and by the Spirit. He teaches divine healing and demonstrates divine healing. He teaches divine providence and demonstrates divine providence. He teaches supernatural expansion and growth of ministry, and demonstrates how a ministry supernaturally grows and expands. Of course, I cannot say it the way you will. There's no question. The doctor was brilliant today. I cannot get to that level, but you guys have a good command of the interpretations of all that kind of stuff. But at the end of it, you said he is the message that he teaches, right? And this is directly from your website. So what I did is, without your permission, of course, I went to ChatGPT, and I said, can you just explain to me that expression? And here's what I got from ChatGPT, right? But at the end of it, it gave me the whole site, and the bottom line of it, the bottom sentence says, this declaration emphasizes the reality of Jesus' incarnation and the truth of his life and message. It serves as a foundation for believers' faith, inviting them into the same fellowship with God through Christ. That's what ChatGPT gave me. And then I said, let me provoke the AI. And I said, okay, maybe I'm not satisfied with just that sort of expression. I said, can you provide a more metaphorical meaning of the passage? And this is what ChatGPT gave me. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, okay, this sounds like brilliant, right? It sounds very good. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it describes everything, the seeing, the hearing, describes, all the parameters, the touching, the proclaiming. And it says, in this metaphorical reading, the passage becomes a poetic reflection of the journey of spiritual awakening, beginning with a new vision, deepening through understanding, becoming a lived experience, and ultimately being shared as a means to correct with others in that divine truth. This is ChatGPT talking, right? And then I said, okay, let me see what the image is. And this is what the AI gave me as an image of that expression. You cannot go wrong with this stuff, right? I don't know. Is it a true image? I have no idea. But the AI recognized the passage to some degree, of course, and it gave me an image of that expression, right? And then I did something else, again, without your permission. I ran your interpretation through ChatGPT, and I said, what do you think of this explanation? I wanted to test you, right, without your permission. Amazingly, ChatGPT gave me this answer. I agree with this interpretation of the passage. And again, I'm not going to read everything, but I'm going to tell you the last one that I found very interesting. It says, this kind of alignment between teaching and living is powerful because it makes the message credible. It reflects an integration between what one believes, teaches, and demonstrates through their life, right? Essentially, the messenger becomes a living embodiment of the message, making it more relatable and inspiring for those who hear it. And that's what ChatGPT gave me when I put in there your interpretation of that passage, right? It means something, of course. Now, we can take it on many levels and kind of try to understand it, but at the end of the day, it basically means that ChatGPT is reading your translation or your interpretation of that particular passage, processes it through all the information that it's out there, and then gives you credit. And not only it gives you credit, but it agrees with your interpretation. Now, maybe that's not something very important, but it does show us the amazing potential of the AI as it now is beginning to be really transformative and really powerful, because we are at the beginning of the journey. We just started this, right? We are just at the beginning. Now, one of the other things that I want to talk about, because Andrian and Brian have been pushing me to not only talk about the Bible, but also talk about business. What I did is this, and last year it was also about real estate, and I heard the word real estate, and Pauline, you talked about real estate. Everybody talks about real estate. I do want to tell you something related to innovation, technology, and things like that. There's a company called Moderna Ventures, right, in Chicago, and they only invest in startups in real estate. And what I wanted to tell you is that it's so interesting to see some of the investments they are making. And in September, I believe, of 2024, they raised $230 million for the third fund, right? The third fund. And now they have more than $500 million under management. And these are just some of the companies that they have invested. And they're all real estate platforms. Most of them use AI. And it's an incredible kind of a process. And if you go and look at every little company that is on that list, you're like, what is the relevance of this? But it kind of gives you a sense of the future. This is what people are building in the real estate world. And these are the startups that are being invested by venture capitalists. Now, that's not the only page, right? Another page, more companies, another page, another page. So what I suggest to everyone is when you are looking at perhaps a more futuristic approach to investing, and we can avoid the basic themes that we have in investing in real estate, we should look at some of these companies that are coming into the commercial world, because people are investing in them. Venture capital companies are investing in them. And if you begin to read about these companies, what you will see is an idea. And having ideas and having information is the key, right? So, I've been to Uganda, I've been to Namibia, I founded the Innovation Hub of Namibia. I also recently founded the Innovation Hub of the Dominican Republic with David Ortiz as a CEO. He's a famous baseball player from Boston. But the key idea is, and that's something that Pauline touched upon a few minutes ago, startups, right? I was in the Innovation Village in Uganda. Brian took me. Amazing facility. They're doing a lot of great things. They get $10 million every year from MasterCard Foundation. But the question is, what's the impact? MIT is the top school in the world, considered to be the 14th largest economy in terms of the companies that the money that the companies produce that come out of MIT. And, there's a reason why MIT is what it is. They do not care about money, they care about social impact, and I believe the doctor spoke about impact. So if you go to MIT and you say, I've got zillions of dollars to give you, the question is, what is your social impact? And if you cannot answer that question, they're not interested. The other thing about MIT is that they celebrate failure. So when an experiment fails, they have a party. I cannot do that in my profession. Can you imagine calling your client and saying, I lost the case, but let's have a party? It just doesn't work. But sometimes it's better to know what doesn't work than knowing what works. So celebrating failure is a very, very, very important aspect of how we kind of look, at innovation, technology, and things like that. So when I went to Uganda and I saw these things, I looked at the innovators, I looked at the people, and I was like fascinated by the mind of those individuals that are in less than perfect circumstances developing all these things. Now, I'm on the board of advisors of Mass Innovation Network. It's a nonprofit, and we've mentored companies like Staples, Genzyme, many, many successful companies with an amazing track record. And in Uganda and many other places around the world, you've got the same mind, because intelligence is colorblind, right? Smartness is not a race kind of thing. It's not specific to any race. Access is the difference. So for me, when I go to Uganda, I go to Namibia, I go to many places, the key for me is, how do we provide access to innovation, a mindset? So when I go there, I want to change the mindset. I want to say, look, you got to think about this, and then provide opportunities for them. So what we do with the innovation hubs that I'm building is we're building a bridge. And the bridge is between Boston and either Uganda, Namibia, the Dominican Republic, because if you provide any of those individuals the opportunity to be part of an ecosystem, they will succeed. So this is where I think innovation should fall into. This is where I think the diaspora, from Africa, any country around the world, has to be thinking about. And I think the US is a place where we have all these amazing opportunities. We just have to make the connections. So for me, coming here and being part of this family of individuals is about making that connection and sharing some of the thoughts that drive me and making me interested. I do want to say one other thing. A couple of years ago, I gave a presentation to the Belmont Women's Club. It's a very, very old club in Boston. It started in 1920. It's a social networking kind of a thing with amazing, individuals. They do a lot of good work. And they invited me to go and speak about innovation and technology. So when I walked into the room and I looked around, the first thought, and forgive me for thinking like this, was, my God, these are all the original founders. Because the youngest one was 85. And my second thought was, I'm going to talk about innovation and technology? The president of that organization was 94. And I said, maybe I should rethink about this. But never mind, I did it. I gave my presentation. It was one of the most fascinating presentations I've had because of the questions that I was being asked. Extremely engaging. They were all into it, talking about all these amazing technologies. And the next day, the 94-year-old woman calls me up and says, I loved it. I want to introduce you to my son. And I'm like, okay, who's your son? He's the CEO of New England Biolabs. And I'm like, New England Biolabs? I don't know. Who are they? And she says, well, it's a great company, but I'll introduce you to him. She made the connection. The guy called me up. We arranged to meet. I found out that New England Biolabs is an MIT spinoff. They do all the materials for Moderna, and it's an incredible company. Amazing research, incredible individuals. They're about an hour away from Boston, so I traveled over, and the facilities were just amazing. Brilliant people, about 1,000 researchers work in that place, right? So they do incredible stuff. So the son actually gave me a tour of the facilities, and he's the CEO for like 20 years. So we were walking around, and I could see him call out the first names of everyone. John, Mary, how are you? And I'm just listening as I am going with him. And I'm like, Jim, do you know everybody here? He's like, yeah, I hired everyone. I'm like, and you like talk to them like this? Oh yeah, this is a family business, okay? Big family, 1,000 people. And then we walk from one building to another, and there's a girl behind us, and he opens the door. Joanne, please go ahead. Moving right along, and then we went into the room, and they gave me a presentation of the company. There's nothing that comes out of that building that pollutes the environment. Nothing. Everything is neutral. Whatever they take in, everything comes out neutral. And they gave me the presentation, and the first thing, and this is why I wanted to say it, the first thing on their presentation was the word humility. And Jim said to me, if you are not humble, you do not work here. Now, this is the CEO of one of the top companies in the world with, you know, the right inspiration, the right people. They do amazing stuff, you know, and yet this is the core value of the company. So I want to leave you with this. We have to all be humble, recognize our differences, but also how close we are to one another. And we all come together to a place like this to celebrate sharing of ideas. And I am privileged to be a part of this and happy that I can share some of my ideas with you and, you know, learn from all of you. And at the end of the day, what do we leave as humans? We leave a legacy, right? That's the only thing that we have. We don't take our money with us. We don't take anything with us. Legacy. And I'm happy to report to you that because I founded the Innovation Hub of Namibia, that for the first time ever, I got the law school from Namibia to go to Vienna and compete in an international law school competition funded by Standard Bank of Namibia. It's the first time that the students got out from, you know, the country, the first time that they competed in an international law school competition in Vienna. 400 law schools. I teach at Boston University School of Law, and I take the team, but I was happier having the University of Namibia participate because that is something that is my legacy, right? Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
What amazing.
Oh my gosh.
That is amazing. Woo. But, Brian,
Yes.
let's just talk about this. He mentioned that artificial nose.
Yes.
Yeah, you got me, man. You got me. Because I want to be able to smell my haters. I'm just saying.
Thank you.
But he mentions renewing. Mentions something amazing. And I'm sure we all know that amazing verse from Romans 12:2, right? About renewing of your mind, right? Yeah. Who doesn't know it? I swear I'll report you to Apostle. Who doesn't know it? Romans 12:2. Patrick, tell them what Romans 12:2 is. Oh, Patrick doesn't know. He doesn't know his name. Have you seen him? Yeah. Guys, it is amazing. How about it for, Dimitrios, just one more time. One more time. This, you don't get this opportunity every single day of your life. A professor at Harvard. I haven't been to Harvard. No, I haven't. Is it MIT? BU? Okay, let's talk about this now. You guys live on that side of town, so you know all these things, yeah. But I haven't been to that side of town. The very first time I really got engaged with university was when my brother was in university. I hung around the university so much, I never attended a single class, but I knew everything about everyone. So that was my best chance at university. So every time I meet people like you, I am more than encouraged, I'm more than empowered, because it's so amazing what you do for the world. And sometimes when I know this is going to bite a bit. When I see teachers not getting a check that's worthy of their time, my heart breaks. because what you guys do for us is exceptional. But what you're doing for Africa and just creating that platform is rather exceptional. So many years ago, allow me to share this, we had a telecom company in Uganda, I won't mention the name, and they had an innovation week. And the idea just disappeared after a few years in oblivion. And it broke my heart because every time I went there, I saw young guys at the university age creating things, creating ideas for the future. But the environment was just not receptive enough to buy of these ideas of the time. And I thought to myself, why? Because we seem to have a challenge. We have education that is solving that problem. But why isn't the environment receptive of the opportunity to showcase our power? But when you create this and let those kids travel for their very first time to a space to compete with 400 other universities who probably have way more privilege, that right there is a chance they will never take for granted. And you have changed their lives. So I just allow me from the bottom of my heart to just say thank you. Thank you very much. And Brian, thank you. Thank you for bringing him, yeah? Thank you for bringing him, yeah.